y'all. It's Kelly Meerbott, host of Hidden Human. Today, we're talking to Karen Walrond, author and leadership coach. She shares her journey of embracing authenticity and the power of kindness in leadership. She highlights themes from her book, which is fantastic for any woman who is on the aging journey, because she talks about joyful aging and passion. And she advises new leaders to breathe, listen, and serve. So join us in this great conversation. Welcome to the space where we reveal our personal humanity to reconnect with our shared humanity. It is truly my pleasure to get to know this amazing human, Karen Walrond, author and leadership coach. Welcome to Hidden Human. I have been so excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Forgive me, everybody, Karen and my audience. Like, I have a little bit of a frog that has taken up residence in the back of my throat. So, Karen, you're a leadership coach just like me. And you and I both know that this is a calling. So, what was it in your soul that called you to do this work?
Oh gosh, that's such an interesting question. There were a couple of things I think all in. First of all, I my leadership story was primarily in corporate America, primarily in the energy industry, right? Here I'm in Texas, I'm in Houston, and I was a lawyer uh and a chief of staff for a large Fortune 200 company, really, here in Houston. And because of that, and because it was Texas, and because it was oil, um, the idea of diversity in the company was pretty much a white man from Texas and a white man from Louisiana, right? Like that was sort of what it looked like. So I was very, I have an engineering degree and a law degree in my background. And so I was very often, almost um, like 99% of the time, the only person who looked like me in a room.
Do you see the shock on my face?
Exactly. So, and I will tell you that in my younger years in the
So last
industry,
year, last
right?
year. Mhm.
20 years ago or so, I would do whatever I could to try to fit in, which was
Yeah.
a joke because no matter what I did, there's no way I'm ever going to look like a white guy from Texas or a white guy from Louisiana. So, so there was sort of I had an epiphany, probably when I became a general counsel, so basically the head lawyer for the company I was working for, where I was like, you know what, this is exhausting trying to be whatever the image of a lawyer in oil and gas is supposed to be. I'm just going to be me and kind of hold my breath and see what happens, right? And and it worked great. I mean, obviously, it worked great because as soon as you sort of let go of what you think you're supposed to be and just sort of ground yourself in your integrity and ground yourself into um you know just knowing I'm going to be the best version of me that I can be when I show up to work every day, um all sorts of wonderful things start to happen. And so
Yeah.
um so when I stopped practicing law and and started writing books I thought, there's so many people still who go into leadership who think that they have to be a certain way or behave like whatever the cartoon character of that person's supposed to be. And I that was just not my experience. So I think if I were going to come up with something, it probably was sort of that realization, that sort of idea that I knew I didn't look like anybody. I As a lawyer, when I would travel and negotiate, I did a lot of international deals, and I would travel all over, to Latin America, to Africa, to um to all over Europe, a couple times to Asia. And I never looked like what they would expect the lawyer from the home office would look like.
Mhm.
And I found that to actually be a little bit of a advantage, right? Like I had people sort of rock back on their heels a little bit, like not exactly knowing
How to
who to
handle. Yeah.
right, or how to approach me. And that was actually a real comfort. And so if I could come in and sort of lead with openness and kindness and generosity, but also intelligence and confidence and integrity, it felt really because people would be sort of, you could see them almost relax with me. And that was really saying something, because as a lawyer, obviously we're in usually contentious situations, right? We're trying to negotiate deals, and we've got one side and the other side, and it's all this opportunity to be sort of jackassy, I guess, and think and for me to come in and go, look, we both want the same thing. We want this deal. Let's tell me what you need in order to zealously represent your client, and I'll tell you what I need, and let's see if we can come to some sort of a agreement here. And it
Yeah.
always worked, and it did my career a lot of good to approach it that way.
Yeah, it's so interesting because first of all, people underestimate me too and they think one thing and I'm like, grab your popcorn.
Right.
Really, because it's, I get underestimated all the time and it used to make me really upset in my 20s, but now I just giggle. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you go
Sure.
with that. You go with that
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
But the other thing was that what really resonated with me with what you said was, first of all, I thought of a fable in my book that I wrote
Mhm.
about a colleague of mine, Aurora, who actually is in Texas. And she used to work with a very, very high level pharma company. And she's Afro Latina, whip smart, like just the highest levels, right? And she would get these evaluations from HR where it's like, you're great, you're da, da, da. And at the end, before she would leave, they would say, could you straighten your hair because it's unruly?
Sure.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
excuse me?
Yeah.
Well, again, not shocked, but I'm just like, really? So the fable is about a unicorn that is born into a world of unicorns with white, straight manes and tails and gold horns. And Aurora was born with a black curly mane and tail and a black tourmaline horn. And they made her like paint it and straight, and she started to die, which is what like I felt like, and I get the sense that you felt like, as we're chipping off these precious parts of us
Mm.
to contort ourselves into these boxes that were never made by us but
Yep.
literally sucked our souls. And when I dropped the filter and stopped overthinking things in my coaching, it just exploded.
I can't say that I felt like a part of me was dying, but I felt exhausted. Like I was just tired every single day. And work became far more energizing when I just showed up, right? When I just showed up. And there's a lot and to be clear, there was a lot of risk in that, right? Um because not every organization wants you to show up as your full self, especially when you're a person of color. And I have to say that a lot of the I mean, I think the word courage is used a little bit too much, but a lot of the courage to be able to do that had to do with the fact that I also had a track record, right? Like people, I had already sort of excelled in what I was doing and so if I had a little bit of credit in the bank, so I could be like, I'm just going to be who I am. And I think that's something that a lot of when I talk to younger people, right? Because I think younger people are a lot of times will come into an organization and be like, I'm just me, which I think is great and powerful and wonderful, but also there needs to be a little bit of circumspection, like of understanding who you're with and who you're around and that kind of thing, and really sort of develop your track record that allows you to be able like, okay, I bring the goods, so I can relax a little bit. I'm not saying hide yourself, but I am saying just sort of be observant of what's around you and how things land first, right? When you're new to an organization, I think that's just smart, no matter who you are.
100%. Like when I'm working with leaders, like especially if it's a C-suite leader that's coming into an organization for the first time, it's like, don't do anything. Just listen and ask questions. So you know the lay of the land. So you know how to move when the players are. And I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think the next generation really has a problem with that. And I don't mean a problem as I take issue. It's they don't have the knowledge or experience to know how to kind of navigate that space. But can you share a pivotal moment in your career that significantly shaped your leadership style?
I will say I had the moment that's coming up for me, and I actually write about it in my book. uh, and I don't know if it shaped my leadership style
Mhm.
as much as it made me double down on it, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I was working. I was the assistant general counsel um, at a company, and uh, a person had been hired into the company to represent our offices overseas. And for whatever reason, the CEO, he knew this guy before in a previous position. Um, and when he brought him in, he said, Karen, we need to make sure this guy understands the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is a law that says you can't bribe government officials to get business, generally speaking, right? Which I thought was a very interesting thing to ask him to be trained on, because no other new person had ever been asked to do that before, and it made me think there's some history here, right? So we trained him. We had outside counsel come in and we trained him and everything else. And probably 6 months after, he sent an email out to people talking about how he had just closed this deal, and basically in the email showed evidence of how he had completely violated the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, right? Like he had done things that were clearly to me illegal, right? Um and so he was visiting the office, and I called him into my office and I said, we need to talk about this email. Um and he got very defensive, got very angry, um talking about how I didn't understand how business was done, especially in this country where he was living. And I remember at one point he stood up. I was sitting at my desk. He stood up, and he was a big guy, and he stood over me and he says, I'm not saying you're stupid, but you're certainly acting that way. And I remember sort of being really stunned. And of course, like, it was funny because everybody outside of my office had gotten very quiet. Like they had like we were at this point, there were raised voices. And I remember looking at him and sort of taking a breath and going, okay, I may be stupid, but this is the law and I'm not going to let this go. Right. And sort of we ended up, uh, arguing a little bit more. And then he stormed out of my office, and I went straight to the CEO, he was out, and I told his assistant, I'm like, when is he coming in? I need to talk to him. Right. First thing. And I remember going home. I remember going home to my husband, and I'm from the Caribbean. My background's from the Caribbean, and I was like ranting and raving and about how difficult this guy was, and he told me I was stupid, um, he said, and I called my dad, who was an executive in energy for a long time, and I'm like, I can't believe this man called me stupid. And my dad said, put your husband on the phone, and he said, give her some rum. And I was like, okay, well,
Yes.
that's probably not good that
Yes.
my husband and my father are colluding to get me drunk because something really difficult happened at work. But I really, like, I remember like sort of calming down and thinking, I was right here. And I was actually really proud of myself because I didn't resort to calling him names. I didn't resort to any, I really stayed very, very calm, but I also was very, very clear and very unmoving, right? And I think that for me, it was really, I was really proud of myself for having really rooted myself in my integrity in that moment. And of course, the CEO backed me up, and it all turned out fine. Um, but it was something that sort of made me double down on, like, no matter what, I'm going to double down on my integrity, because the wrong it's never the wrong thing to do. Because even if my boss had come in and said, "Well, Karen, that is how the world works and you're fired." Like, even if he'd said that, I knew I could have walked away feeling like I did the right thing here, even if everything around me. And that was really something that I think, certainly as a coach, um I encourage people to do, right? Like, you know what's right and wrong. You went to kindergarten. Like, you know what's right and wrong. So just always fall back on that.
First of all, I love that story. And I do love the rum thing.
Yeah.
I gotta, my hat is off to dad and your husband, because not to get you drunk, but like, I remember I had one really, really rough day, and I work in the basement of my house, and a long commute. So I'm storming up up the stairs, the wooden stairs that are like echoing with every footfall. And I get to the top, and my husband hands me a glass of whiskey with a big iced.
I mean, it's sometimes and, and it's so funny because it was a small shot of rum, and it was, I don't even think I finished it at the time, but sort of that the jolt of everybody going, "You're right, calm down," right? Was
Yeah,
really sort of a, um, like, it was like, "Okay, like, if this is happening, I need to take a breath," right? Like,
yeah,
if people are doing this, it's time to take a breath, right?
yeah.
And that was really, God bless them for both doing that. They're
Oh,
both good men.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I remember that one finger of whiskey just kind of rounded the edges. And he's like, "You okay?" And I was like, my grandmother always said, "You can't fix stupid," and, like, that's what happened today. But here's the thing. You and I brains learn in contrast, right? So it's like they're showing us who not to be, and what I'm wondering is, 'cause I've noticed that you've rooted yourself in integrity, which I love. That's one of my personal values too. And I believe we need to live and breathe it every day. So, I'm hearing that from you, and I'm just wondering what your leadership philosophy is, maybe personally and professionally, if it's different. Mine isn't. And how has it evolved over time?
Well, I mean, it's funny you ask that because this phrase has sort of stuck with me this year, and it's kind of become my mantra. Um, and it's that kindness is a power move. And I think one, I don't think people really see that. I think they think of kindness as weakness, which it's really not. I think in a lot of ways it's harder sometimes to be kind. Um, the other thing is that I'm not talking about being nice, right? Like, I'm talking about having boundaries. I'm talking about being rooted in that, rooted in integrity. But there's even, even as this guy was screaming at me, like, there was a way to get through that without belittling, without being horrible to him. Like, I was very, very clear who I was, but I never resorted to the sort of aggression that he had done. And so I'm very, and honestly, like, I think of the person that's coming to mind right now is in The Devil Wears Prada, Miranda Priestley. Like, the one thing that I love is she's an awful person, right? A character. But the one thing that I loved about her, she never raises her voice. And if anything, that she got quieter, right? When she was angry.
Yes.
And I think that there's really something very powerful in being able to be quiet and calm, especially in heated heated situations. And so that's sort of my thing now. And that's really sort of what I tell them. I'm like, you are never going to be wrong to to default to kind, and kind doesn't mean be a pushover. kind doesn't mean um kind doesn't mean like capitulating, right? Like, it's about, I am going to continue to treat you with respect. I'm going to continue to treat you as an equal, like a human being. But I'm also going to be very, very firm, and you're going to always know where I am, and you're going to know where my boundary is, and I'm going to respect your boundaries, and really sort of being that. So um kindness is a power move has become sort of my mantra, I think, in life and in work.
I love that. And like last night, what I've been doing like lately is so I have to tell you, I'm one with my problems. Like I know like where I need to work. And
Right.
one of the things that maybe it's being a woman, maybe it's growing up in an Italian family where we're really loud all the time and in everybody's business, but I always feel it's
Caribbean families too, by the way.
right,
Yeah.
right. It's like, my grandmother would make these trays of lasagna for like 6 people, and I'm like, "Are you feeding all of Italy, or like what are we doing here?" Um, but I always feel like I need to have the last word, and what I've been doing lately, and I'm gonna say it's a gift from COVID because I got COVID for the first time in March, and it's like that COVID brain thing is real. And the way it shows up for me is like it's a delay, which is what I've
Yeah.
wanted my whole life. And it was like, so last night I was thinking, all right, I need to send this email because I've got to have the last word. And what has
Mm,
jumped in my mind is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? No,
mm,
no, no. Okay, stop, ego. You need to sit down. But I was also laughing because my mantra this year has been joy as resistance. And I actually
mm,
got that from an episode of Brene Brown's podcast with Gabby Rivera on it in 2020. And I was like, that's genius, but going back to Miranda Priestley. So I've taught my clients this technique called alpha tonality. And it's basically what you just described, like a really good, she's a really good version. Wednesday on Netflix is a really good version. And the first scene of The Godfather, the original Godfather, is like the perfect version. And what I've been doing when people get upset with me, like lately, and it's usually, is it in, sometimes it's in coaching sessions, but mostly it's out in public, is I'll drop my voice down an octave, which if I do that today, you might not be able to hear me, but I'll go, "Are you okay? Who didn't hug you as a child? What can I do to help you? What do you need from me? Do you need a hug, a juice box, a nap? Do you need me to call you tomorrow? Like, what do you need?" And usually they're like, "What the hell?" Because they don't know how to respond to it. They expect us to go back at them, and when you don't, it rocks them back on their heels, which is good. It's a good thing.
Well, and the other person, as you just said that, the other person that I think of, because she's in the news all the time, is Kamala Harris right now. Like, do you remember when during the debate with Mike Pence, and she just looked and she went, "I'm speaking,"
Yeah.
right? Like it was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, right? Like there's something about being able to just sort of modulate, um, that is really, really very powerful, and being able to not to not rise to the bait, right? Like to be able to just go, I'm gonna do this. And it's hard,
It
right?
is
Like
so hard. Oh my
it is hard to do it.
god.
Yeah. Which is why I'm like, it's not weakness. It is absolutely strength. Yeah.
No, it's literally like if you ever watch Game of Thrones or House of Dragons, like I literally have Sunfire like rising up inside me and I've got to like lasso her neck and pull her back because like I had a guy similar to your situation, but recently in the last couple of weeks in a meeting in with my clients, C-suite people who literally pitched a tantrum directed at me.
Mm,
And he had done it before and he slammed his hands down on the table. I was like, so I looked at him and I go, "Okay. Like what am I going to say to that? Because you know what's going to happen if I go back at him. I'm crazy, I'm hysterical, I'm wrong, my tone is too much, like all of that." And
yeah.
I was thinking about that story that you told me about the guy like coming at you and being wrong, and I'm like, women, especially Black women, do not have the grace or space to be anything less than gracious, graceful, calm, and it's not right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I will also say that, I'm not going to say I'm not a yeller because my daughter would argue with me, but I cannot think of a time when I have raised my voice at work ever, ever, ever.
Yeah.
And I have been told many times, "You're so angry. You're so there's no winning in a lot of cases like that anyway, right? Like there really is no winning. But I do know that for me, I walk away feeling better about myself if I have one said my truth, but two done it in a calm and moderated way. I always walk away and I'm like, I said what I needed to say and I didn't lose my cool. I can live with myself, right? Like I can live with myself. So like so even more than whether, I mean, the fact is people will say what they're going to say no matter what. But you knowing that you've done right by yourself, I think is a really, really powerful thing. I mean, it's how you sleep at night, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, you're so right. I walked away from that situation like,
Yeah, sure.
"Go ahead, you get mad. That's fine. Get mad all you
Sure.
want."
Exactly, sure.
And guess what ended up happening? He apologized.
Of course he did. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, check. Um, all right. So I think we've already covered the most challenging leadership situation you've ever been in, right? Would you say?
Yeah, yeah, I that for sure.
Okay, so in your perspective, because I get this sense, and maybe I'm wrong, that you are very spiritually aligned. You are very
Mm.
clear. You're very grounded. You've got this beautiful mix of left and right, like badass lawyer and calm, like I don't know what your daughter would say, but that's the way I'm kind of reading it. So, can we talk a little bit of data and metrics, which is for me, it's but some of the people in
Yeah,
our audience like to
let's
hear
do it.
about it. In your perspective, what are the key indicators of success?
Oh wow, that's so good. What are the key indicators of success? And you're talking professionally.
Yeah, or let me ask it a different way of successful leadership.
Yeah. So it is not title, um, which because I can certainly think of people who had the title that were atrocious leaders. Um, it's not title. I think it is I think you know you're a great leader when people love to work with you, honestly. Right? And I mean people love to work with you whether or not they report to you or whether or not you report to them, right? Um when I think of the time that I was general counsel, so I had 3 or 4 lawyers working for me and a paralegal. I had a team of about 6 or 7 people that were reporting to me. And I remember, and it was the first time I'd ever had people report to me. And I remember I thinking, being very, very careful that learning that my job was to make the people who worked for me look good and the people who I reported to look good. And if I could do that, if I could make the people who worked for me look good, so that meant sometimes like, Karen, congratulations on closing that $40 million thing. Oh, you know what? That was actually Rick who did that. He's a star. I'm so proud of the way he handled that. It was really really cool. And also to my boss, I really my the CEO is asking me to do X and this is really tough. I'm like, okay, how can I support you to help you make that easier? Like if all I did was make sure that my boss looked great to his people and that the people below me looked great to my boss, I looked good, right? Like I looked good. And of course, people loved working with me because it was such a service oriented thing that people were like, "Yeah, we'll work with Karen." And it was absolutely again, kindness is a power move, right? Like so being really kind to that. So I think that that's really when people around you really respect you and really um will really do whatever they can for you because it's a joy and it's pleasurable to do that, you're a leader. I don't care where you are in the organization. You're that's done.
Sometimes you don't know you're having the impact that you're having. Like, so Cecily Kellogg, who's amazing and has been with me on and off since 2010, and I've got a great team of mostly female leaders around me. And last year, January 18th to be exact, we lost our 5.5-year-old golden retriever to Lyme disease. And flowers showed up for my team, and it said, "You always ask how you can support us. Now we've got you." And I'm
Oh
tearing up, and I
wow.
was like, I did, like when they were having tough times in their lives, like, I always say it's you first. Whatever priority you need to do to take care of you first, like how can I support you? What obstacles can I move out of your way? And you have that moment, you're like, okay, I'm doing something right. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
So
for sure. For
I
sure.
love that. So walk
Mhm.
us through your decision making process during critical moments. So things that are tense.
I think that, so there's a couple of things. One is how emergent is it, right? Like if and I think there's a difference between like is it an emergency or is it like sort of a long-term issue that has to be like there's a difference, I think. Um and I think, the first thing to do is just sort of well, first the first thing I always do is take a breath, right? Like I have to. And I've learned that is a learned thing is sort of literally take a physical breath, then figure out what do I know? What am I speculating about? What's actual fact, what's actual speculation, and what can um what can stem the bleeding, right? Like if it's an emergent, like what can we do to sort of stem the bleeding as we figure out where we're going to go. um so it's hard because I can't think of a specific like issue that I would work with. But I think the first thing is always to take a breath. The second is always to figure out what is fact and what is speculation, like what is people just kind of winding up, and then figuring out what can I handle in the immediacy right now to sort of start to send the bleeding. I think that's what I would say. I will tell you, I really am pretty proud of the way I act in an emergency. My husband and I are very very different. He's the person that can be calm all the time, but can in an emergency can get a little bit stymied, like sort of
Like stuck. Yeah.
yeah, or like maybe it'll just work itself out. And right now I'm thinking about Hurricane Harvey. We lost our home in Harvey.
Oh my
Um
God, Karen.
and I remember the water was coming in, the flood water was coming in. And my husband, well, my daughter laughs about this all the time. My husband, who's English, was like, "Let me go make some tea." Right? And the water was coming in. And I'm like, "We don't have time for tea." Right? But I'm very, very like, this is what we're going to do. We need to get everything off the floor. Alex, go pack your clothes because we're probably going to have to evacuate. So go pack some clothes. Like, I'm very, very good. The Where the downside is after the emergency is done, I can still ruminate, right? What's going to happen? What if this is it? And my husband's very good about, you know, let me get you a rum, right? He's the one that can be very very calm. And so emergencies, I tend to be very like I get very laser focused,
Me too. Me
right? I
too.
get very
Yeah.
laser focused. So that's easier for me. It's the when things are fine and I'm constantly still looking for problems, right? Like, well, what if this and what if this? And that's the lawyer in me, right? Like 'cause that's what we do. What is this? What is that? And that's the probably the harder thing for me to go, you know what, celebrate a little, or you know what, like relax a little, or let's get into a rhythm, that's tougher for me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And first of all, I'm so sorry about your house in
Yeah,
Harvey. Like
we're fine, we rebuilt.
I grew up in South Florida, and like I remember in 2005, Hurricane Jean and Francis tore through. I had my first house, which was a condo on the 18th floor of a high-rise condominium. Wait,
Yeah, a lot of wind.
wait for it. My neighbor had hurricane shutters, right? But what you don't know is after every story above 10, the wind goes up 10 miles an hour. So the wind blew open her shutters, flooded her place, came under the baseboard on our shared wall. And I had to walk up 18 floors. And I remember it was pitch black. And I opened my door and I can feel the water mid calf. And I'm like, this is not good. Okay. And it was like one of those things, Karen, where I was like, close the door, back out, walk back downstairs. And I was like, there's no power in the building. There's nothing I can do right now. I'm going to my mom's. So, but it's tough. Like, and water, my little old Italian grandmother used to go, water's the devil. Like,
Man.
yeah, bad juju, right? But yeah, I'm like you. I overfunction in a crisis, but before I ruminate, I collapse. Because I'm like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then I don't realize that I've been awake for 16 hours, right? And then I collapse. But what do you do to continuously develop your leadership and yourself as a human?
As a lawyer, at which my license is still active, I keep my license active in Texas. You're required to do continuing education, right? In order to keep your eyes light. So because I've been a lawyer for 30 years, 30 Jesus 30 years now as of this year. um that's sort of a thing for me, is like constantly learning. So I do a lot of stuff. I read a lot. Like also as a author, because I write, I re- I there's a lot of, and I write nonfiction, right? I write about leadership and I write about things like that. So it requires a lot of research, just generally speaking. So I do a lot of reading. Um, Conferences, networking. I have a group of friends that we meet with each other to talk through career stuff occasionally, which is great. I call them sort of my war council. So I have a network of people that I can bounce ideas off of. So really that's it. It's harder as an entrepreneur with, and I don't have a team, like it's me. So I don't get to practice as much like of hands-on leadership as I would have in the past, right? But certainly a lot of self-education as much as I can. And then I think I mean, I think as a coach, there's a certain leadership quality that you have as a coach. Um, and as a workshop, like, I do a lot of workshops, and sort of, when you lead a workshop, there is a certain um even if it's a microcosm of what leadership might look like for somebody who actually has people reporting to them, you get to practice and dabble a little bit about what that looks like. So all of those sort of provide me opportunities.
I love that, and I love that you call it the War Council. I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, uh-oh." So you mentioned your books, and we mentioned that you were an author. What are your books? And obviously, where can we find them?
So, the first book I wrote a book many years ago that's out of print, so I'm not going to talk about that one. But the first book that I will talk about is called The Lightmaker's Manifesto, which came out in 2021, How to Work for Change Without Losing Your Job. And it's about really, it was a really interesting book to write because I wrote it in 2020, which was, as everybody knows, was sort of a dumpster fire of a year, especially in this country, right? There was not only the COVID, but it was, George Floyd and Sandra, like there, all these things were happening that year. But it was a great book for me to write because I was interviewing a lot of really amazing light makers, people who were doing really good things to help save the world. So,
Yeah.
so that's the first book. Then the most recent book that came out is Radiant Rebellion: Reclaim Aging, Practice Joy, and Raise a Little Hell. And it's about joyful aging. That came out in
Oh
October.
my gosh, I'm gonna have to
Um,
get that because
I'm very proud of that book. It's really funny. It's kind of a little sleeper success. It's been winning awards and all kinds of really fun stuff. And so that's been a really fun one. And then I'm currently writing a book right now. Um and the title is not quite done yet, but it's about the joy of being an amateur, of not having to excel, of actually doing things and pursuing things just for the joy of pursuing them, as opposed to monetizing or for the Instagram or anything else. So that's the one I'm working on, and you can find all of them pretty much wherever books are sold. But if my website, KarenWalrond.com, you can also find everything there as well.
yeah, let's buy it through Karen so she gets mo I mean, as
Yeah.
as a self-published person, I understand, and, like, I love, I saw the Light Makers Manifesto, and I was like, "Ooh, gotta buy that," and then when you were talking about aging with joy, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna say something that I've heard a lot of people on our" well, I'm assuming that we're the same age group, but, menopause sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny about that the aging thing. I will tell you. And by the way, you can buy them books anywhere. Like, I'm not self-published, so wherever you buy them is fine. My website just tells you where you can look for them. But yeah, it's so funny because I wrote the book Radiant Rebellion, sort of thinking aging's not a big deal, right? Like, I literally kind of went in thinking I don't understand why people are really freaking out about aging. Yeah, menopause sucks and there's things like that, but generally speaking, but what I found, of course, was that the world is designed for us to hate aging, because the more we hate aging and the more we fear aging, the more money we spend, right? And it literally has been designed that way. And I go into sort of the history of what it was like when we used to love aging in the 1900s and what changed. And basically, what changed was two world wars and a great depression, and so the mandatory retirement age came in, right? And so, like, and all of the things that have changed to do that, and so now we are acculturated to despise aging and to constantly shift our focus to what's negative about aging. And my argument is not to deny that there's certainly challenges to getting older. That's, I mean, of course, but also there's a lot of great gifts and a lot of really joy, and we should be spending at least as much time focusing on that as well. And so yeah, so it was a fun. That was actually a really fun book to write. I wrote it when I was turning 55. My marriage was turning 20, and my daughter was turning 18, my only child, and graduating and going to college. And everybody was only happy about the 20-year marriage. Like, everybody was like, "Oh, 55, double nickels, are you okay?" Or, "Oh, mama, your daughter's leaving, are you okay?" And I was like, "No, that was the goal, was
Yeah.
to get her out of the house,"
Yeah.
right? Like, the goal was always to get her to college. Like, this is successful. So yeah, so I hope you enjoy it. I think it's a fun book. I've had people tell me that they love that it's not preachy, and it's not it's not like, okay, ditch the hair dye. Like, it's not that. It's just about, consider another way to approach it.
Well, yeah, and, I was thinking and you're right, there are certain things like when I turned 48 years ago, I was like, "Oof." I'll steal a line from Beyonce. I feel so cozy in my skin. Like it's, and then I started to get really confident and trust my training and trust my gut and like not overthink or talk myself out of things. Like it was just like if the gut's saying it, we're gonna follow that voice, right? But I'm gonna have to ask you like how I can get one with your signature on it.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there is a link on the website that will link you to my local bookstore, and I run over and sign them all the time. So yes, so that you can say all that. Yeah, for
Awesome,
sure.
awesome. Okay, last question, and then we'll do 4 rapid fire. Is that okay?
Okay,
All
sure.
right.
Yeah, of course.
So, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting to take on leadership roles?
Well, I mean, I think we've already talked about it. One is it's never wrong to breathe, so take a breath. Two, probably listen more than you speak. I mean, at least at the very first, figure out, and then finally figure out how you can be a service leader, how you can be of service. Like I think if you lean into all three of those things, that's a great way to start, and you're going to be fine. And also, oh wait, one more, and I would also say remember that you have already had a lot of success if you've gotten into this role, and so you really already have the wisdom within you to figure out how to do it. Just think about the lessons that your successes in the past have brought you there. So I would add that.
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it. I don't know. We'll see.
What is your favorite comfort food?
Well, okay. So I mentioned I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad, and we have a food. It's called pilau, and it's really basically a rice and chicken dish.
Yum.
That's a stew, and there's sometimes we add a little pepper to it, but it's actually browned in brown sugar, and then the chicken is browned in brown sugar, and then you add all of these lovely spices and things to it, and then the rice, and it's fantastic. So pilau for sure is my comfort food.
Yeah, I'm just like over here drooling. 'Cause, I've been to the Caribbean a lot, and I love Caribbean food. I mean, like,
Nice.
Jamaican food is like oh, yeah, I love it.
It's so good. Trinidad is really interesting because we are probably more than any of the other islands very multicultural. So we have a very strong, obviously African, Indian, and Chinese um, population, and our food is sort of a combination. So there's a lot of curries and a lot of things that are very. So yeah, Trinidadian food. I will tell you, Trinidad has the best Caribbean food. I'm just let you know.
You
I
know,
may be biased, but I there's a lot of evidence to support me.
I love that competition between countries. Like, I was talking, a couple of episodes ago, I was talking to Desiree Peterkin Bell. My husband's a teacher in West Philly and, like, 7th and 8th grade, and I went and read my fables to them, and I was
Mhm.
meeting the kids afterwards, and there was one young man, from Liberia, and I could tell he thought I didn't know where it was, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's in Africa," and he looks at me like, "Okay, white lady, like,
Right?
I
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
you're" and I said, "How's your jolliffe?" And he goes,
You're
"Let me
like,
tell you," he's like,
yeah.
"Our jolliffe in Liberia is
Is the best.
award-winning. Do not
Best, better than Ghana, better than Nigeria, right?
don't let any other country tell you otherwise." I said,
Yeah.
"Well, Mr. Meerbott is a former professional chef. You should bring in a recipe. He'll make it for you." And he goes, "I will ask my mother tonight." Best
Yeah.
jolliffe ever. I was like,
That's
I
awesome.
I stand corrected, man. Like, awesome, awesome. Okay, what books are on your nightstand?
Oh, golly, this is such a hard question because I have a stack of books that I probably need to look at. So okay, so one that I have to be read, to be reread is Bill Bryson, Notes from a Small Island. He is an American. He's an American writer, but he lived in England for a long time, married to a Brit, like I am, married to a Brit, and he writes travel books. And Notes from a Small Island is about him traveling all over England, and he's very funny, and he's one of my favorite writers. I've read all of his book. He's written books called Made in America, about language in America and how it differs from the U.S., the evolution of it. Um, he's really funny. But Notes from a Small Island is on my list to read. Um, I always go back to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I do that a lot. And what is one that I've oh, Self Compassion by Kristen Neff is one that I've just started reading as well, rereading. Yeah,
Ooh, yeah, I'll have to
yeah,
put that on my list. That sounds
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay,
She's great.
what songs are on your playlist?
Oh, so there's a couple of playlists that I have. One is for movement. One is for I've just started as part of the research for my new book, doing pottery. So, my pottery one, I tend to listen to Trinidadian music. So, Kes the band, is soca. Soca is the music of my country, which is sort of soul and calypso. So, I've been listening to a lot of Kes the band lately. I've been listening to a lot of Cowboy Carter lately for when I'm
I
moving.
love
Yeah,
that.
so a lot of those are on there right now. And oh, what was one? Oh, Bill Withers, A Lovely Day. I've been listening to a lot lately, like Bill Withers stuff. So those two, those three.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I'm gonna check out Cast the Band because I
Yeah, it'll get you moving. It's good.
soul and calypso, are you kidding me? Like I can't.
Yeah.
All right. What are you most grateful for in this moment right now?
Well, I'm grateful to be here. So let's start with that. So thank you very much. I'm grateful. My kid is just blowing my mind lately. She's been this summer, she's 20, and she has been going to summer camp since she was 8 years old, and now she's on staff, right? So she's old enough to actually be an employee. So she's living at the campsite, managing all the counselors and everything else, and she's just having such a great time. I have to tell you, like, it is my idea of hell. Like, I am not a wilderness person at all, right? And I don't like anything having to do with like bugs, and I don't swim in lakes because gross. And like I am, like, it is literally the opposite of what I am about. And I love that she's doing this for herself. And I'm just so grateful that I have a kid who is just willing to serve and willing to, push herself, and I mean, she's loving if she dies and goes to heaven, she'll be at Camp Allen. And she's just having a great time. And so I'm just so grateful to be able to watch her like really thrive.
Yeah, I was laughing because one of my best friend, her name is Marcy, and she camps all the time, right?
Oh no, 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 no,
So
no.
yeah, that's like I'll do it, but I want everything set up. Like I'm not like one night she went out into the middle of the woods and there she's like pouring down rain and it's her Tesla and we set up the tent in the rain. I'm like, go with God, my friend. That is not me. Like
No.
glamping, I will do. Like have it set up for me. I'm not.
Mm-mm. Tell people my parents struggled to make me go to college so I didn't have to sleep on the ground. So the way I figure it, if I'm sleeping on the ground, I am
Yup.
dishonoring my family.
Yup.
Like, I'm not
Yup.
doing that.
So I'll tell you a really funny quick story. I went camping in the high desert of Washington State with my husband, and we were on this air mattress, and the air mattress deflated during the night.
Of course it did, because that's what
So
they do.
he rolls over, Karen, and I wake up flying through the air, and I'm like, "The hell? What is going?" I was like, "I am not doing this ever again. It sucks."
Mm-mm.
No
No.
offense to all you campers, God bless you. I will stay in an
Yeah.
RV and a glamping tent. That's it.
I won't even do the RV. I no. I will go hike with you all day, but I'm going to go stay in a hotel. I'm not no. I want a structure.
Well, sister, I am so grateful. Thank you so much. And thank you to Cecily for bringing you into my life. I am so, so grateful to know you and be alive at the same time you are. So, if somebody needs to reach out or wants to reach out for your work, for your book, for a workshop, just to talk, how do we get you?
Oh, for sure. Just go to KarenWalrond.com, Chookalunks.com. Either of those will get you there. But KarenWalrond.com is the easiest way. And you'll find my social media. You'll find out how to get, hire me to be your coach, how to hire me to be a speaker, all the things, where to get the books. Everything is right there.
Yeah. And can you spell it just because I want to make sure people can get to you?
Sure. It's just my name, Karen, Karen, Walrond, Walrond, KarenWalrond.com.
Thank you so much for your time. And
It's been an honor.
yeah, it's been an honor for me too. I hope we get some time to just connect outside of this because you're just a powerhouse.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, likewise.
Thank you to our audience for listening. It's our intention on Hidden Human to inspire you to go out and have authentic conversations to deepen the connections in your life. Thank you so much for listening, and make it a great day.